welcome to Podcasting 101, the survey course where, as I promised, if we don't get cut off, you're going to learn everything you could possibly want to know about start to finish podcasting and why you could be doing it tomorrow. We do it tomorrow. My name is Jason Velasquez. I'm the Breakout Glass, breakoutglass.com. I used to say the Berkshire's mightiest podcast news network. And then Matt got in touch with me and said, would you like to do a session? I said, why? I'm just a podcaster. He says, yeah, but you're the only podcaster in the country who runs a local news network. I said, bullshit. Come on. I searched and I searched and I searched. There are lots of local news podcasts. There's no question about that. There's some great ones. And in fact, probably because they were copying me, the New York Times in August began their daily news podcast. I love setting trends. Don't you all love setting trends? Like being the first to do this or that? I do. And when I started podcasting, I had already been the first bilingual online newspaper in the country. So I've done this twice now. That I started August 28th, 2001. That didn't go so well. Within 2 weeks, the nation's attention was not focused on independent bilingual newspapers. Nobody gave a crap about what I was doing. And that didn't end up panning out so well. But one of the things that I did get from that was this desire to figure out new, better, cheaper, faster ways of delivering news. And I moved to Boston shortly after that, and I started meeting all these great musicians. Right. And there's a great indie music scene in Boston, and thereabouts. I mean, all of Eastern Mass is full. And that's not just the guys who play 3 chords, in Back Bay. They're making $200 a day. Don't let them kid you. But I started saying to these guys, are you reaching the audience that you want to reach? And they're like, not really. I mean, sometimes we get 15 people at a show, 20 people at a show, and that's how they were making their money. And, they were selling merch and t-shirts and CDs and all that. But I said, I have an idea, and I'm going to start doing a podcast of indie music called The Mongrels Howl. You can still Google it, and you can find it. It was awful. I'm embarrassed. If you find it online, burn it. But it did teach me a lot. And what it teaches me that lasted is that not much has really changed. In the last, we're talking 12 years, not much has changed. I want to talk first about the rise of the mic. Many people credit this guy. Anybody know who he is? Anyone? Anyone watch MTV in the 80s?
Duran or something?
This is Adam Curry. Well, you can't really see him too well, so I won't blame you. I had this. Shut up like me. You can see that much light. Oh yeah, that's Adam Curry.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Adam Curry.
Yeah, he owes me $10.
There we go. Adam Curry was a VJ on MTV. Obviously, he was in keeping with the times in the 80s. I'm from that era myself. That's my home era. I never could get my hair that high. Not for any sustained period of time. But anyway, he had this crazy idea that when he left MTV, that there should be this opportunity for not just the big guys, the big bands who made it to MTV, but little outfits. And that's what he did. He said, you know what? I'm going to invent this thing, and I'm going to call it podcasting, and everyone's going to love it. Almost nobody remembers that Adam Curry sort of was the godfather of podcasting, sort of. We can go back to at least 1991, when alternative radio, hosted by David Barsamian, started making their recordings. Anyone listen to alternative radio? Public radio? They were making their recordings available by internet at least a decade before podcasting was a word. So when some people say, well, I've been podcasting since the beginning, like I sometimes say, that's Not exactly true. But what I will say is that since 2005, it's gotten huge. It was something that those of us who started back then did in our basements. People thought maybe we should get girlfriends. People thought this is never going to take off anywhere. I mean, you remember Wayne's World? Mm-hmm. Wayne's World. They're in the basement, like doing their video community thing. That's kind of how we felt. I'm only going to show you one slide of Edison Research's amazing 2017 podcast consumer report. It is available for free. That will be included in the link. And the links that if you want, I'll send you all the links. But this is what I show clients. 2008, of all the people polled, which represents a fair cross section. I mean, you can read their data, study. But from 2008 to 2017, that's a big jump for any media platform. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're talking radio or television or whatever. That's better than 200%. So that is worth bringing up to your potential clients, because many of your clients don't listen to podcasts. That's the thing that sucks, is that my listeners listen to podcasts. The advertisers often don't. So that's a hurdle that you have to get across. That convincing them that just because you aren't listening doesn't mean that other people aren't. So Edison Research, I will provide the link. Please pore over that study, because you'll salivate at the numbers if you're a data geek like I am. Still though, that doesn't explain why you might want a podcast. Again, show of hands, who's done a podcast? Excellent. Just why? Why did you start one?
I think we were looking to do a sports podcast.
Okay.
And currently it's football season, so we were just hoping to find a new outlet into younger high schoolers mostly, and dip into that audience.
Excellent. Somebody else? Why?
When I worked at a weekly newspaper, we did sports podcasting also.
Sports podcast. Okay.
That was like 2004.
Okay. Who else? So what other hand? Sports. That's awesome. See, I have no understanding of most sports. I know ping pong really well, but
We have two guys that were doing a morning show on Sports Talk Radio. Now do it as a video podcast.
Okay. That's a good idea. So shiny is not enough. I say that to people who ask me, it's so cool, everybody's doing one, I think I'm going to do one. My answer is like the same that I tell people who say, I love kids, so I think I'm going to be a teacher. No, if you love kids, go have one. Just because you love something doesn't mean you should do it for a living. I would say that there are some definite reasons for doing a podcast. Number one is because there are some super low barriers to entry. What I mean by that is that you can start podcasting with exactly what you already have. You could start recording your with your smartphone, right? Because you've got your note taker, your voice memo. You could share it to your Google Drive, and then you could bring it into your editor, and you could bring it into your WordPress site. That's what I use, or Drupal, and you could have a podcast up in half an hour, if you wanted to. So super low barriers to entry. You don't have to buy anything new. The only thing that you might want to do is buy some software or download some free software. My main reason is that it tells some stories better as audio. And I would say that if there's an emotional story, if you're talking to somebody about whose house is just burned down, you can have in text a family member saying, we lost everything. And I'm going worst case scenario here. We lost everything. And then she'll say, even all of my grandmother's photos. There's no way that you can put enough ellipses in a text article that will equal the pregnant pause of, we lost everything. Even grandparents' photos, right? I mean, nothing will get you that. Nothing will get you the tremor in their voice. Nothing will get you the cheer of a crowd at a game. Nothing will get you the excitement of a political rally, the way audio will. The other reason that you might want to have a podcast is because you frequently cover things where you want absolute accuracy. I have been fortunate in that people kind of sort of take me seriously and invite me to press conferences that are not generally open to the public, and I see and hear things that shock the crap out of me sometimes that are said, and I put them online. I put them online and I don't edit, and I know that my counterparts sometimes clean that up and leave out things that I feel the public needs to know. And they can't deny it. When it's on my podcast and they say, I really didn't think you were going to put that on there, I said, you shouldn't have said that. Right? I mean, if you're going to say something to a bunch of reporters, expect that every one of us is going to publish it. And you can't deny it. You can't say, I misquoted you. And then, of course, there is also the element of accessibility. And by accessibility, I mean, for those who have vision impairment, or those who have, lower literacy. Some 1/5 of our nation is not literate. But that doesn't mean they don't want to know what's going on, right? I mean, they want to hear the news. And if you can give them a news product that they don't have to feel bad about not being able to read, then you have done a social justice act just by making it available. And if you want, you don't have to create a new product. You could record the very same articles that you've written and just make them available as audio. Eastern Arizona News, I don't think they're represented here, but they do that. And at first I was like, why do they do that? And he said, the editor said, a lot of them, they don't read. They can't read. Or they can't read in English. So they can hear it in English, they get it, but they're doing it as a service to those who would otherwise not be getting the news. There are some cons. There's a learning curve. You can make some great audio that's sort of like took down home, homespun, sort of, amateurish. Amateur sometimes sells. But there is a learning curve if you want to play with audio and make it sound good. If you want to learn how to optimize it for different players, and you want to make sure that the levels are adjusted properly, it takes a little bit of practice. There is an increased technology load. Now all of a sudden you are dealing with files. You are dealing with a lot of data, lots and lots of gigabits of information that you never had to deal with before. You need to put it somewhere. Hosting costs are not to laugh at. If you go through SoundCloud, which I don't recommend, you're going to pay a lot of money to host your audio there. I see a lot of people doing it. I'm like, why? And then there's the risk of mission creep. When people say, I love that, I think I heard Charlotte, the Charlotte Agenda say, there's this temptation to do everything. There is. I started off with one show, which was just a local news show, the top left corner, because we're in the top west corner of Massachusetts. And somebody said, can you cover the arts a little bit more? I said, I should have an art show, right? I mean, that makes sense. And then I started including a lot of sort of heavy bands, hardcore acts, and some little ladies, Tila, my sweet little lady friend Tila, said, I'm really amazed at the sounds that are coming out of my speakers. And I said, she goes, Jason, you might want to do a show just for those and maybe separate it. I said, well, okay. And it's true. You've got a certain set that wants to hear about, the opening of a new Picasso exhibit or the opening of a new theater run, but they don't want to hear, some thrash punk with foul language. So I said, you're right. Let me do another show. I'll do Indecent Exposure, INDIE, Indecent Exposure. And then I had a whole bunch of bands contact me and said, I want to be on. All of a sudden I'm doing 3 shows a week. And that's not easy. So you want to find one thing, get really good at it, stick with it for a while. Otherwise you'll get no sleep like I do. There are some pros that make it all worthwhile. You have a built-in audience. I started as a podcast network. I didn't have a built-in audience. I had to, and still have to, scrape and claw for every listener I get. Because every listener I get has to come to me as a podcast listener. Which sucks. All of you have readers who would probably be interested in hearing some audio version of your product. So you're in a great spot. I mean, if you don't at least give it a try on a limited basis, I'd be very shocked. You have most of the tech, as I've said before. You got a computer, you've got a phone. If you're using a standard phone earpiece, it's also a recorder, which is pretty good quality. Finding guests is easy. Every time there is a new business that opens up, they want to be on your show. Every time that there is a theater production or a gallery opening or a restaurant or whatever, they all want to be on your show. Finding guests is not a problem. And lastly, as I intimated before, voice is intimate. Voice is authentic. Voice in podcasting is typically in their ear, which is a really intimate place for your news to be. Because when something is in the ear and it's done properly, it sounds conspiratorial almost. It's so personal. I don't think I've ever done that before. How's that look? Does that play well?
Make the picture.
Okay.
Stick out your tongue, go neener, neener, neener.
I like you guys, all of you, more than that. The on-air personality. Who should be on the mic? Behind the mic, technically, or in front, depending on how you look at it. That is a big question.
At the mic.
I like that. Who's at the mic? Who's at the mic? I will tell you right off the bat, I want to get off the mic, except for one, maybe two shows. I am a mediocre journalist. I'm going to say that right now. I've always been a mediocre journalist. I'm a mediocre salesperson. I'm probably a mediocre editor, right? I'm a pretty good podcaster. But what I really want is I want to find other voices that bring some diversity to my network. I don't want it to be my voice all the time. I've had some people say, I was listening to your shows looking for anything else. It's like this desert of Jason. Just Jason for the miles and miles to go. I'm like, well, there you go. I've tried some people as volunteer helpers. It kind of works, kind of doesn't. I'll get into that a little bit more later. Training people, once you've figured it out, takes a lot of time. Depending on the size of your organization, you may be forced to do it yourself to get behind the mic, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you are capable of letting different people take shots at it, that's a good way to find out who just sort of gravitates toward it. Your voice is good enough. Does anybody know who Gary Vaynerchuk is?
Yeah.
Gary Vaynerchuk. Have you ever heard him?
Yeah.
Yeah? He kind of sounds like this, right? He's got this gravelly voice, and he's like, I'm intense. He's like 5 times my speed, and he's like, 1/10 my weight. But he's like, oh, guy, he's brilliant. And everybody loves him.
He has a very dirty voice.
He's got a very dirty voice, and he's profane. That's what you mean.
Too, right?
But they love him. His voice is such a character that just listening to him is fun. Spit out your gum, spit out your cough drops. That stuff clicks. Don't do it. Just don't do it. What stories? Okay? There are 4 basic kinds of stories, although 2 of them are almost the same. Features. Features are the most fun to put together, and they're the hardest. I love doing features. Olson Farm in Lanesboro, Mass. It's a terrible, tragic story. It's being foreclosed on. It's this young family, this young couple. The farm has been in the family for 3 generations. It's awful. It's an awful story, and I want to do that story because I could go out there with them. I go on location in the field and record chickens and sheep and I could record the wind and the babbling brook, and I could say, I'm gonna tell this story like nobody can tell this story. I listen to it now and I get choked up. I get choked up over anything, but this story really gets me choked up because when you hear the babbling brook and the rooster crowing in the distance, and you hear Christine and Christopher talking about how much the farm means to them, it doesn't take you long to understand why I got an email saying that people heard the episode and immediately contributed. They're going to lose the farm anyway, unfortunately, but people immediately contributed because they could hear it. I'm a little bit of an activist journalist, if you haven't figured that out. And you can have sound bites. It could be something less, emotional. It could just be, you're going to be talking about this tax increase and you get a sound bite in there. It could be that you're doing a piece on a local band and they've let you use some or all of their music, and then you just sample that in there. Features, they're fun. People love them. Interviews, phone, studio, in the field. I have been doing primarily interviews for 2.5 years. They're primarily 25 minutes. Primarily, people get tired of interviews after about 15. I'm going to be honest with you, I love doing them. I learned on Terry Gross. Terry Gross, when I grow up, I want to be Terry Gross. She's, the bomb. Anybody know who Terry Gross is? Fresh Air, WHYY, Philadelphia. Listen to her. If you want to know how to do an interview on mic, that's really gripping. Terry Gross is the way. Also, Krista Tippett. Anybody know Krista Tippett? Krista Tippett does a podcast called On Being. And she also has this amazing ability to tease very personal stuff out of people. I would say and there's a little bit more of this later, but I promise I'm going to get to this deck here. What you can do, and what I've started to do, is I've started to play sections of the interview and make the complete interview available to subscribers. That does two things. Number one, it gives me a reason to not have all that entire interview. And number two, it gives my subscribers the feeling that, gosh, he loves us. He's given us the whole package. And of course, when I say, and don't forget, subscribers get the entire interview. And people subscribe. Analysis can be opinion. It can be, analysis can be, again, anybody listen to Chapo Trap House? No? It's also filthy. Chapo Trap House is a sort of news analysis of a bunch of people sitting around in a room telling bad jokes and tearing up the news. It's really good because they interrupt each other and they argue, and so it's got this really vibrant, active feeling.
Conversational.
I'm sorry?
Like
That's the word I'm looking for, yeah, actually conversational. And then of course there's entertainment. I have a show, my newest show is called Cornbread Cafe. You like that name, don't you? It's just, how can you not? It's corny. It's Cornbread Cafe because it's blues, it's folk, it's bluegrass, it's gospel, and mostly that, and some country. Basically all of those people who create and listen to that music eat cornbread. That's like the one thing they have in common. Entertainment is great because I do nothing. I get artists to submit their music to me. I write the intro, I write in between the lead-ins, in between the songs. I just pick music that goes really well together. I'm done in an hour and a half. And that's my most popular show. Why aren't I doing it all the time? Because it's not news. But it's fun, and people love it. Tech choices, microphones. I use this bad boy in the studio.
Yeah.
That's the Yeti, the blue. And it's a good studio microphone. I also tend to bring it out in the field, which is a bad idea because it's really not meant to be dragged out around, but the sound quality is quite good, so sometimes I'll do that. It is a USB and DSL, somebody was, huh?
Bluetooth?
No, not Bluetooth, but
The round holes.
the standard, like
round holes.
yeah, the standard connections any microphone has. Actually, that's not. That's just Bluetooth. The ATR 2100 by Audio Technica. That's ATR 2100 by Audio Technica. Is both USB and DSLR ZQ1, whatever it is. And that's useful to have because if you were using, well, there was a little 4-track here, if that's what you had, you can plug up to that. If you don't have that, then you can plug right into your laptop. There is another option, which you should have always, if you're going to be doing this, going out in the field. You need something that fits in your pocket, something that's this small, that can have a 32 gigabit card. This is the Zoom H1. $69. Usually you can find on sale for $69. And it's microphone. It's got the XY.
And records.
Huh?
It's a microphone and recorder?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes.
That's what I want.
Yes. Not only is this a great little microphone that fits in a handbag, right?
What's that called again?
The H1 by Zoom. You know, you get yourself a little tripod. Basically, you have an on button here. You have an on button here, and then you have a record button here. And then if your studio microphone of choice breaks down on you for some reason, you can record direct USB into your computer with this, and it sounds pretty good. It sounds really good when you're at a meeting or something. You stick it in somebody's face. Because people don't know what this is, it looks a lot. Tell me, what does this look like to you? What?
It does look like a taser.
It looks like a taser. I walked up to somebody with this sucker. They backed up 3 feet. I was like, no, it's really a recorder. So what I do
Put a
now,
little kind sock on it.
yeah, what I do is, I do this just because it looks less like
scary.
a taser. But I get a lot of jokes from people who actually know something about audio and like, we're inside. Where's the wind gun come from? I'm like, trust
It's
me.
right. It's ugly, right? It's scary. What's it called again?
The H1 by Zoom.
One. Okay.
And the next step up is the H4N by Zoom, which is it is a recorder, field recorder, but it's also a 4-track. It's like $150. Things are so cheap these days. We are
Tech choices.
tech choices, yeah, software. The best, easiest, cheapest way to get into it and to learn basically about multi-track editing is something called Audacity. Search on it. Audacity is free. There is a Mac OS, there is a Windows, and there is a Linux version of Audacity. It has oodles of documentation. It has all the filters that you might want, from reverb to echo to delay to you name it. It's got everything. It's a little bit more, you gotta figure it out, for yourself than some other things. But when you learn on Audacity, you get really good at mixing audio. And then when you move to something else like Adobe Audition, which is definitely a pro tool, no question about it, you appreciate the hell out of not having Audacity anymore. But it's $25 a month to rent it. Audition from Adobe. I say learn studio processes, learn editing, mixing first for free, then bump up to something that costs. Media hosting, I mentioned that SoundCloud is an option. What's great about SoundCloud is that you can upload an audio file and get an embeddable player, it's the embed code, and drop it into your WordPress post. That's great. Unfortunately, the cost of adding more audio to your SoundCloud account is prohibitive. What I do with mine is I use it as a discovery device. In other words, I use SoundCloud, I'm building slowly a follower base. I don't have many, I don't work hard at it. But then, once I get people following me, I send them an email saying, check us out on my site. So I'll put a new episode up, and then I'll say, check us out on the site, and then they become mine. So I only use one episode at a time on SoundCloud, and I take it down and put a new one up. The other options are self-hosting. Like I have DreamHost as a web host. I love DreamHost. They don't give me any problem. They fight for the privacy of their users. I like that about a web host, that they will actually go and spend, like half the year in court fighting for their users' privacy. But the other thing I like about DreamHost is that if you have a shared hosting plan, there's no maximum. You can have as much as you want. There are some people who have had complaints that eventually they kick you off, or they start saying you have to get rid of these files. I've had them for like 7 years, and they've never told me I have to stop uploading files. So whatever I'm doing right, they're okay with me. That's not the best way. The very best way is to go through a media hosting service that is built specifically and only for media hosting, such as Libsyn, Libsyn, Libsyn.com, I assume. And I'll show you what their player looks like. They have basically the setup was you can host so much per month. You upload a certain amount per month, and as long as you don't go over that, you don't pay any more. And then once the month has gone by, you can upload more. So they're not charging you for stuff that you've already uploaded. And that's important. You don't want to keep paying for stuff that nobody's listening to. You want it available because somebody, I have people finding episodes that I published a year and a half ago and they're listening. Why? I don't always know. Sometimes it's an interesting story or whatnot, but sometimes I'm like, that is like a dated piece of content. Why are you listening to that? And I want them to be able to get to that. So the other option, which is my preferred, Libsyn's the biggest. There are certain factors about Libsyn that make it very user-friendly. Blueberry, Blueberry. Blueberry is who I use most of all. Blueberry has this squishy zone where if you accidentally upload a little bit more than you're allotted, they don't charge you for it. They don't penalize you.
What was it called?
Blueberry, Blueberry. There's a lot of cool features that Blueberry offers too. They offer free stats, which I love free stats because when I had my previous web host, I'm not going to talk any shit about them, but I should. They didn't give me free stats. I had to pay for stats. I said, I'm not paying for stats. I'm paying for hosting. Why don't you give me the stats? So now I get the stats. I can go on my tablet and I can say, let's find out how many downloads I've had as of right now. Oh, 13,000. How about that? And my customer, oh, okay. If you do up an Excel sheet or something based on hokey data that your web host gives you, it looks like you're lying. It just looks like you're lying. And a lot of people do, so. Format options. This is getting down to user experience here because everything before was creator experience. Now we're going into user experience. Frequency. Don't commit to more than you can deliver. Don't commit to more than you can deliver. It has bitten me in the butt. One way to start is by doing once a month. Start slow. Do it once a month. It could be a wrap-up of the month's news. It could be looking forward to what you're going to be covering. It could be new business profiles. I feel like, I could stand in front of the camera, but then the lights are a mess. So frequency is an issue. I would say that the New York Times is a really interesting model that they're doing a short daily news podcast. I think that's fantastic, and they're getting more and more listeners every day because it's punchy, it's quick, it has a lot of different stories. Duration, I mentioned before, people don't like a 25-minute interview usually. They get bored after about 10, which is why it's great to have little segments. If you have a magazine-style show where you have 5 minutes about this, and 2 minutes about this, and 10 minutes about this, it moves along rather nicely. Caveat to that is that there are some podcasts, not necessarily news podcasts, that are 3.5, 4 hours long. Hardcore history, everybody love history, just love history. Do you listen to hardcore history? Yeah, I got a 3.5 hour show. And I listen and I'm like, I don't want to go to bed because I'm going to keep listening.
Road trips.
Yeah. Yeah. The other reason though that 25 minutes is great is because a lot of folks have a, thank you. Shucks, dang it, I'm paying for what? No. A lot of people have a 25-minute commute, 25-minute train ride. It makes sense. Long form versus magazine, I just described. Personality, you need to figure out what your personality is. Okay, I'm going to just cover the most important things here. Protect yourself and your sources. You're doing something in audio, which means that there's no plausible deniability for you or for them, right? It's going to go on tape. People are going to say it. Be sure they know that you are recording them. I actually conducted a full interview with somebody who thought I was going to type up a report about what we talked about and then talk about that on the show. I got in trouble. That was a bad thing. Let them know when the mic is on. I have had people say, I didn't realize the mic was on. Let them know the mic is on. Let them know how much you edit. Ums, are you going to edit out ums? Are you going to make them look smart, sound smart? Or are you just going to edit out egregious screw-ups? Let them know. Some people are used to, but in the text world, you're not going to be adding ums and uhs and you knows. You don't type that into your story. But they're really, really egregious online. Explain your archiving policy. I destroy with I use Onyx to do it, to overwrite 3 times with military-grade encryption everything I'm not going to make public. Because if I ever get subpoenaed, I want to be able to say, here's my laptop, have at it. And I do not want my sources to ever say, why didn't you protect that better? Ask them on mic if they have questions. Keep that. Keep that. And keep, if you do we are recording now, and could you just say a few words so I can check the levels? Right? Just check, and you already know the levels are fine. But by saying anything that suggests that you're recording and they know it, that helps. You're going to get complaints anyway. You're absolutely going to get complaints. Deal with it. Creating a show of your own. Who will be the hosts? Guess we've talked about this already. Telephone interviews. Excellent intro. If you use, and here's how exactly do we do this? If you use a recording bit of software like Audio Hijack or Ecamm's call recorder, I don't know what a Microsoft version is, but that's Audio Hijack or Ecamm, E-C-A-M, call recorder, you can split the tracks. So there's you and your guest.
Audio hijack.
Audio Hijack, yes, not Pro. Thank you. Audio Hijack, it's got like a little bottle with a cork and a waveform as a logo. It's $49. It's pretty affordable. And what you can do is you can record your Skype calls. If you use Ecamm, you can record Skype or FaceTime. And it gives you a way to wade in without being on site. It lets you play with audio without actually leaving the house or the office. Choose your space. Echoes, you can't take them out. I can take a lot of bad audio. You can't take out an echoey conference room. And back up your audio. What time do it? Who's got the time? I can't see the time here. 4:13. Oh Lord. Who will do the auditing? I think what I'm going to do is there's so much. There really is. There's just so much. But what I really want to do is I want to take a few questions because I think that those are more important.
Hey, can you go back to the montage?
I want you all to have this because I want more of you out there. Let me tell you why I want more news podcasts, because that legitimizes me more. I want not like my district, but like everybody else's district. I want podcast news because then people will say, oh, this works. So editor, or Jason rather, thank you. Jason at Greylock Glass. breakout.com, and I will email you the slide deck, and I will answer any questions you have. And you'll get the notes that go along with this as well. And that's that.
Can you,
No.
can you say just a few words about monetization?
Yes. Monetization is a little harder, only because, for me, because they don't know me. As I said, I had to claw every single listener. Had to be a new podcast listener. You guys have it much easier because you can package this in with other things that you do, right? You can say, if you do a mid-roll ad, and the mid-roll ad is when you either get canned audio, an advertisement from one of your, one of your clients, that has already done it, or you do a voiceover. And don't forget, this episode was brought to you by Joe's Tavern. They've got the best wings in town. Come on down. They're 25 cents before 6 o'clock. And you drop that into your middle of the thing. And you also might have a banner ad. You also might have the newsletter ad. It's a great way to say, this is a good add-on. And because people like hearing themselves, or hearing about themselves, they tend to share it. The other way that you can monetize this is by doing, word that I've heard all weekend long, sponsored content. I have a tire company who, when I went to buy some winter tires, he was so good at explaining the whole process of winter tires. I said, I want to sell you something, okay? I'm going to buy your tires, but I really want to sell you this idea of explaining what you just told me in 10 minutes, 10-minute segments, and we're going to do a series. They're on. They're in. So next week, I'm going down to record stuff that I never realized was interesting, right? And
Which is huge. If they can make something you didn't think was interesting.
Yes. And it's something that I would explain to my listeners if I had resources. I would talk about, tire safety if I had resources. He's going to pay me $200 to talk about it. I have resources. So those are the basic ideas: mid-roll and pre-roll advertising, sponsored content, and then as a package that's connected to other things. Those are the main functions. Any other questions? Tech questions? Anything?
Oh, one. Do you have to download a podcast, or can you just stream and listen to audio?
Edison Research has a really neat slide about that, a graph about that.
Okay.
Most people are still going directly to the podcast page. So when you go to greenlockglass.com, you click on an image or a title, it takes you to that podcast episode page, and then there's a player. You click play. That's how most people are still doing it. I do have more and more people subscribing through iTunes, and I have a link to subscribe through iTunes and Google Play. But still, the majority of my listeners, because they're local, they go to my page because I put it on Facebook. Yes.
Okay.
There might also be some publicly available audio. We broadcast a
Thank you, everyone.
a political roundtable each week.
Oh, yeah.
That a local business group does. They have the Democrats and the Republicans that are local representatives
Crazy talk.
get on and actually they get on, they describe what their agenda is for that week, and then they have business people and others, it's open to the public, to ask questions on this conference call. And they just record the entire conference call.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
we take that and just post it. So,
Yeah. No, I think anytime that you can get audio for free, that's great.
yeah. I didn't realize we were podcasting.
Did I tell you
But
start to finish how to do a podcast?
podcast.
40 minutes?
Yeah. But another thing that we did was we did a story on a marijuana bust.
Right?
And the girlfriend called up our office and left a really nasty message about just cussing us up and down and carrying on. And so I just took the recording and put it on the website.
Sure.
And because she left it on my equipment, it's not like she didn't know she was being recorded.
Wow.
Well, there you go.
Wow.